This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Okay, looking forward to the segment as we always do. Love the guy, really. Bovedainc.com for your two-way humidity control packs. Bovedainc. They don't touch the plant, but hashtag Boveda Cannabis and at Boveda Cannabis. Give them a follow as well. As we always learn everything that's going on, we're going to learn some facts today. Please welcome Lance Lambert. Hi, Lance.
Hey, how's it going, Todd? How you been?
Man, I'm good. You know, if I was telling Bilal, it's kind of funny because, so I'm back in studio and it just sort of feels like work again, even though I was working. It never really felt like work. And, I would imagine you must feel sort of the same way, traveling so much for Bovedainc.com and being such a great face to marketing a product that, I don't even know if it needs any more marketing. Everyone loves this. And when you're back in the head office, you're like, oh, wow, we actually do work here.
Yeah, it's very true. It's kind of a left brain, right brain, right? I think for both of us, you're in a different mode. I can sense it with you. We're good enough friends now to where I can definitely sense the difference between when you're remote and when you're on site, so to speak. And you probably can with me as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's a good point. You do, because you sort of adapt to that environment that you're in. And sometimes one is a little more loosey-goosey, so you act a little more loosey-goosey. And some you're a little more straight edge. How is it that Boveda, obviously, we do a ton of work together, and it's so much fun. Like, what are other ways that are fun, effective ways for the team at Boveda to promote the product?
We've gotten really creative. We've done some fun stuff, just working with educators and influencers, getting the message out because, it is. I mean, I'm an advocate, and thankfully, this company allows me to be outspoken and very vocal about how I stand in my support of cannabis from a medical position. But thankfully, we have a network of friends that really promote how it benefits them in their specific lifestyle or in their specific needs. So that's a way that we do get creative. Also, as you mentioned, we definitely do still attend quite a few shows, events, and expos, and not all centric to B2B. We really like to get in front of the consumer and hear what they have to say as well. So we do participate in a lot of events that overlap with the consumer as well, a couple up your way, whether it be, the Grow Up or Lift, events where they open it up to the consumer so we can hear feedback from there too, which is always great. I love hearing the consumer's input on it.
Well, good to know. And, we always talk about sort of hypotheticals in the industry, a lot of the business side of stuff, which involves a lot of stocks and companies who are publicly traded. And then we talk about kind of R&D and research and development that is going into what we are continuing to learn about the flower and all the different aspects of it. And there's so many. And that's one thing you really, really helped educate us on. But now today, from what I understand, you want to tell us some actual facts. Is that correct?
That is, both you and I very much give the disclosure that everyone knows we're not doctors. I did live in my college town for years, but by no means got a doctorate said and done. I know you're on the same page. So we always disclose that we are just sharing information, that this is just anecdotal in many instances and just giving feedback from the field. But yes, there's been some studies and up until recent years, really, Tel Aviv, specifically in Israel, has been the focal point. There's a college, a university there that actually studies specifically cannabinoids and cancer both. So a lot of studies have come out of there, but lately we've been seeing studies coming out of North America. So I thought we'd share some of the latest, some a little more fun, some a little more closely tied to cancer, which I think affects all of us. I love the support you do. And myself being a cancer survivor, I'm very much a supporter as well.
So let's start with the Harvard research finds a chemical in cannabis that can help fight pancreatic cancer. My goodness.
Yeah, this is huge. Now, this does hit home for a lot. I mean, even referencing Tommy Chong, who went through pancreatic cancer and then subsequently went through rectal cancer, and he turned to cannabis to help him out in tough times. But this is nice to actually see a study coming from researchers, and this is specifically from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute out of Harvard, which decided to study pancreatic cancer and cannabis. Now, pancreatic cancer is one of those tougher, a lot of cancers are more sort of centric, I should back up, to male anatomy. Not that it isn't applicable to both genders, but pancreatic, colon, testicular, these are all things that are more predominantly found in male patients versus female. So having said that, this is one of several cancers that are a bit of an enigma to the medical industry. So they were quite surprised when they came across the fact that there is an element within cannabis that actually helps out, and it's flavonoids, which flavonoids is something we don't even talk about too much. It's a little bit more of that 2.0 or 3.0 side of the plant, right? So we typically talk about the more topical, popular cannabinoids like CBD or THC or CBN, but the flavonoids are a component that technically is in all kinds of fruits and vegetables and plants. This is what gives it the color, what gives it the flavor, the smell. So it is interesting that they found that it's actually useful in stopping pancreatic cancer tumors from growing and for stopping pancreatic cancer from spreading. So this is a pretty pivotal study, and even more so impressive being the fact that it was done on U.S. soil, which, again, is very uncommon versus other countries' studies around the plant. So keep an eye on that, more to come. And again, just stoked to see that things are moving in the right direction for that specific cancer.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what everyone is hoping for is these actual studies that are done, not just some testimonials. So that's really what has been happening so much with this research and development, and so much funding is going into that. Good news out of that. And then the latest University of New Mexico study shows that marijuana for pain relief support.
Yeah, and this is something, again, it's a bit of a blanketed feedback that we've gotten from, obviously, the medical side of the industry, but even from the adult use or recreational side, a lot of people do come forward and say that cannabis does help them with pain, helps them with apnea, sleep apnea, eating disorders. You know, most of those things are just kind of verbalized, but for this university to actually study, you know, how much it helps with pain relief specifically with test patients. And, you know, everyone, you've been into a doctor, I've been into a doctor, they ask you, you know, what is your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10 as it pertains to this specific issue? And they actually found with utilizing cannabis in treatment, the patients dropped on average 3 points. So, again, if you had a pain that you gave a rating of a 9, they found it subsequently dropped closer to a 6 for individuals that did somehow incorporate cannabis into helping as a pain reliever. So again, it's a little more general study, but it's one that a lot of people have known and studied from an alternative medicine standpoint. But this is really important, right? Because this is imperative for people that are combating opioid use and opioid abuse, because we know specifically in North America, that has been an epidemic of people too much so leaning towards opioids, which is a highly addictive painkiller.
Yeah, and it's a talk that I know one of the first conversations we've ever had with you and your team from Boveda.com, where there was, you know, some kiddiness about people within your company and talking about even their turnaround, and it is just still an ongoing epidemic, even though there's, you know, they've tried to curb it, and how you prescribe it in the lawsuits and the billions of dollars of settlements. Yet, you know, people are finding ways to get certain drugs to deal with pain, and to hear and see these types of studies in support of it. You got to think, especially for a community like yours that has always been very careful advocates of it, and maybe away from, you know, public companies or social media, but at least in your own dinner table conversations, you're all ranting and raving how great it is for pain management. And it's nice to see this stuff become official. It really is. You know, these are just still very early steps, but you got to think from all the just really at the end of the day, the actual advocacy of it that we're so careful of saying, that, you know, it's nice to have the findings support it.
Yeah, that's exactly 100%. And we know there's a lot of people out there, they're still on the edge. They're still kind of questioning because it isn't something that they're recognizing as coming in traditional forms as other pharmaceutical, pain ailments or painkillers. But that's the miracle of it, and that's something Canada is going to be exposed to in, just a few months from now, with the advent of concentrate being launched in your country, where people are going to see different iterations. I mean, there is limited pill available, but there's all different. There's topicals, transdermals, elixirs. There's different ways to consume this that is not the conventional means in which people associate with, i.e. chillums or joints or bongs, more of the mainstream, if you will, kind of cultural styles, but ways that are very similar, if not same as, medical applications that they're familiar with in their lives, and that do give that end result that isn't psychoactive, that isn't that quote unquote heady high, but is more of that body relief that they're looking for. So I'm excited of these official studies as well, for certain.
And this is where it gets fun. Lance Lambert's joining us from bovedainc.com, Boveda, bovedainc.com. And I think, it's people know that I've talked about it very briefly because there's still a lot of behind the scenes that take this stuff to get off the ground. But a company that I even have a website for, that tryandlove.com, there's nothing you can buy there yet, is I've been a big believer on how can CBD mixed with lubricant help sex. But now we're finding out through a new study that cannabis use, they're saying, will improve your sex life.
It's very true. I mean, it's one thing that is more so a conversation, I'd say, traditionally behind closed doors or amongst friends. It's conversations I've had with folks in the industry that are more comfortable with sharing all the beneficial attributes that attract them to this plant. But yes, there was a study, our friends at Ganjmanure kind of put this on my radar. Ease, which is a company out of California here, they have a program called Ease Insights, and they partnered up with a company called Lambert. They actually did a study based off a survey, essentially, from Lioness opt-in users to get feedback on their interpretation of how cannabis may or may not benefit their sexual lives. And so they have an article about Let's Talk About Sex, which is kind of fitting, but it gets into, what are some of the benefits of cannabis and some of these key takeaways, just to go through them right quick, Todd. And, neither you or I, although we might have grown up, with certain individuals that gave us sex education. Dr. Ruth comes to mind. I remember listening and watching her when I was younger, and then older in my high school and college years was Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla. But I'd love to hear some of these traditional mainstream folks get their hands on this and give their input, because the takeaways, one of them, kind of a synopsis they put up, the longer, faster, better, more is their summary of this section. And it's talking about longer. And it said cannabis increased the longevity of pleasure sessions, 64% for solo and 73% for partnered of the respondents. Faster, saying that it's easier to reach climax, 63% solo, 71% partnered. Better, it makes the pleasure session significantly more satisfying, whether solo or partnered. And then more of respondents said adding cannabis resulted in more orgasms for many respondents. So it's some interesting facts that, again, I think a lot of people that currently use, they already knew these things. But to actually find a study where a consensus was done of all these individuals, and they didn't get too much into dosage. So that is one thing that I think we've talked about before, but it's something that they reference as well, is you really have to know yourself. Everyone has their own endocannabinoid systems. Everyone responds to cannabis and specific strains differently. But the interesting takeaway from here is most individuals, they did less than an average dose. So the average dose, at least state to state here, is considered 10 milligrams. And the most enhancement came from someone that utilized 6 to 10 milligrams, which is a relatively small dosage, all things considered. And then the fact that actually ingesting it, so the way in which it was consumed was kind of interesting as well. So, again, a cool study and just something to reference. It's not all about beating cancer and curbing addictions. There's also other benefits from a health standpoint that can lead to a happier lifestyle, even albeit in the bedroom. So I thought that's kind of a nice one to share as well.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to share. And the one thing that I can tell you that some companies have even figured out is in this sort of space is ways to break down the oils out of, separating from the cannabis plant to make it more water soluble so it doesn't even break down condoms. So, for those that are still using condoms and practicing safe sex, it might not be with a partner, might be with someone new, that they've even figured out ways to do that now.
Yes, very much so. The technology, and I know it might be a slightly played out term for some people in certain industries, but nanotechnology has definitely played a role here. To your point, the water-soluble technology, the fact that they are able to get the matter, rather be crystalline or some sort of byproduct, into that soluble solution that is more ingestible and is more adaptable to certain situations, to your point. The technology has come so far, and that's what it comes down to. And I think I referenced that before, but you look at this industry compared to the medical or the pharmaceutical industry, where they have billions of dollars to invest. Every new drug has a certain amount of budget set aside for R&D. And that probably, just for one of those studies, for one new drug, no matter what it is, I would say that makes up for this entire industry in what it has as far as budget for R&D. Yet look at all the technology that's come out. I even referenced, I didn't think I was old enough for it, but getting diagnosed with diverticulitis, where that's essentially an infection of the intestine, and having to be on, I'm not a big fan of Western medicine, most people know that, but having to be on certain antibiotics that left me nauseous, my stomach hurting, I wasn't able to eat, and then using one of these transdermal patches and it just making all that dissipate, just no longer having the nausea, no longer having the pain. I mean, I would have never imagined being able to apply this medicine with a transdermal patch, similar to like a nicotine patch, if you will, versus having to do a topical or even ingest it. So things are coming a long way. And again, in the next few months, Canada is going to see all these things firsthand. It's going to be neat.
Yeah, October 17th is when sort of edibles come into play, and people can consume cannabis in far different ways. And I've asked you this in the past, but it still is... the one thing that I will tell you, and this is just from an outsider looking in, that I just don't really know, because I still don't know, because I'm sort of naive in the space on that side of things about, dosages and the amount and people being careful. And I just hope that, that people are learning enough about it, not just, because I would imagine that if you see a pack of gummy bears, it would be hard not to just go and try 8 of them right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very true. It's a campaign that I think Canada has picked up on, and something we've done in several states. But start low, go slow. I mean, it's something that it wasn't any different. We hate to compare ourselves to other industries, but just like the first time someone might have consumed alcohol, you didn't down a fifth of vodka, you didn't down a 6-pack of beer. You start out with one drink, hopefully, 1 or 2 drinks, and saw how that made you felt and went from there. You really have to learn how it works for you. And you nailed it. That's another thing, Todd, is how you ingest. When you inhale it, that's up to 40% absorption rate. But when you consume it, the other end of the spectrum, you only absorb 4 to 6% of that THC. So it very much varies in the way you consume. So just be cognizant. And again, start low, go slow.
Yeah, I love it, my man. Lance Lambert, BovedaInc.com, 2-way humidity control packs, keeping that flower fresh, and hashtag Boveda Cannabis, even though they don't touch the plant. Where can we see you next? And what's in about a minute here, 30 seconds? What's next with Boveda Inc.?
Yeah, next for us, we've got a crew up at Cannabis Science Conference in Portland, which is going to be epic. My head of R&D, Brian, is going to be speaking, so that will be great. And then myself, I'm going to be up in Vancouver next week, and that's going to be for ICBC, and then in Northern California for Hall of Flowers. I hope to see you guys out there, and definitely get educated about the plant.
Yeah, Vancouver's a good one, and you're going to be sitting on a panel with our man Darren Gill, who we know very well.
Yes. Which be the moderator of them. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, Darren's a great guy. They're very, very knowledgeable guy, and very business oriented too. I love his directness. Lance, thank you, Lance Lambert, for that update. And man, good stuff. All these studies, all these facts, and more facts to come. And that's what we're going to continue to do when we speak to you, and also as the space evolves. Is factually learn what it's good and not good for. Thank you, my man.
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate it. I'll catch up with you soon, eh?
Yes, exactly. We'll talk soon. Right. I got to call Lance tonight at 7 p.m. and Blau, if that's what you're wondering, not to be a little upset over there.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.